Over the course of working with you guys for during that little time period, there were some really good questions, and sometimes I make some unfair assumptions about what you may or may not already know about the program. One really genuinely good question was this. So all of these DLGs, the daily lesson guides, right, have a thematic component to them, okay? And you've heard me also refer to the anchor text, okay? So the anchor text is the book that goes along with it. So this book here is called A Long Walk to Water. That's an anchor text, and I think is that a 6th grade book? I think so. No one's committed that to the long-term memory yet? It's 6 here. So as you can see here, the DLG is called, thank you, A Long Walk to Water is what this entire DLG is talking about. And the theme is yesterday. Okay, so I'm not sure why I said it that way. I immediately regretted that. But anyway, the theme is yesterday, anchor book, A Long Walk to Water. That's mine.
This one says his name is Raul Wander for 6th grade.
Oh, you're absolutely correct.
Oh, sorry. Oh, no? Yeah, 6th grade.
Yeah, this is on yours too.
Oh, wow.
Is that?
Because that says 6 on the side too, right?
This is the
2.0.
2.0, Amos Fortune, 6th grade.
Fortune, and then in the back.
Yeah, that's 6th grade, yeah.
Yesterday.
So grade 6, A Long Walk to Water.
Yeah, that's your first thing.
Can I ask a question?
Yesterday, grade 6, A Long Walk to Water.
Yeah.
No, you're,
This is 6th grade and that's 6th grade. This is 2.0, that's 2.0, right?
yes, but there's different books for every book.
Okay.
So the first book you're going to teach in the year is The Hero's Themes and it's Amos
He
Fortune.
was saying this yesterday. His title's different than that.
Yeah, you have the Heroes DLG. This is the Yesterday DLG. So you have the first book
Yeah.
of the year. Have you
Takes a team, guys. Takes a team. I was lost on that too.
Oh, I got you.
How that title?
I have never seen this title before. This title is His Name was Raul Wallenberg, which sounds really interesting. But
It does.
I've never seen that ever.
I'm having a moment right now.
I will
So I was trying to make this clear, but the anchor text for this, A Long Walk to Water, is the book that you'll be going through the entire course of the entire DLG over the course of a month, okay? So this is the whole group instruction text, okay? This is not the book you hand to your kids and have them go off and learn independently. This is the book that you're utilizing in direct instruction in the whole group in all grades, okay? So they encourage you to get one of these as a lap book for every one of your students so that they have these and can read along with you. So just bear that on. This is not one of the trade books. You don't treat this like a trade book. Do you understand what I mean by a trade book? Like for independent reading and stuff like that, or self-selected reading? That is not what this book is for. Okay, there was a question, go ahead.
Yeah, so the other one, the workbook, when do you use that?
So this is your teacher's manual. This is where all of your black line supplies are if you don't have the digital one. This is where the lesson scripts are for whole group reading instruction are located. It's where your scope and sequence exists as well. All right, very good. So that was an important clarification. We're on to word study right now. So you remember that there are 3 components of word study that go along with this program, and those 3 components are vocabulary and spelling, and also phonics, which has to be direct and explicit instruction. You'll remember at the beginning, I'd mentioned to you maybe the importance of thinking about how this program could be divided into components designed to allow your students to work independently, And then also recognizing that there are aspects of this program which will require you to engage in direct, explicit instruction with them, okay? And the benefit of identifying those things ahead of time, or those aspects of the program ahead of time, is that will allow you to create opportunities for your students to work independently during which you will have the opportunity for some dedicated one-on-one time with your students, okay? So I do have an arrow here indicating that vocab and spelling are outlined in your DLG as being very much integrated together. Even to the point that if you'll look in the back of your DLG, you'll see the vocab words. You'll see like one of the activities has all the words listed there, and you cut them apart and you sort them. Some of them are identified as being just the academic vocabulary, the ATV, the anchor text vocabulary, and then some of them are just your spelling words, okay? And in fact, I'll show you later on here, they provide a script in the index with actual sentences you can read to your students for the spelling test and the vocab test. So even the spelling and the vocab tests are given simultaneously, okay? It's just that they emphasize the vocab acquisition as a part of the word study experience, which is wise. That's smart, actually. And it seems like it's a fair spot to do it, to be teaching vocabulary alongside spelling. Yeah. Good. So here's a scope and sequence of your vocab during a week. And this is taken out of a daily lesson, your DLG, your daily lesson guide. By the way, how many of you guys are in schools that have gone to a 4-day school week? Do we have any students in here that are, some schools, we do have one, okay. There are some schools that are doing that, and I won't lean too heavily on that reality, but again, teaching to standards is going to be a really, really important way to make sure you're covering content. And even if you weren't doing it 4 days, looking at the standards that you're going through here for these is going to be a really important component in not only getting through the content, but also teaching in a multi-grade setting, okay? I'm going to say something here, and this is just based on my own experience. I'll share with you what I've done in my own experience, okay? What I have found is that the spelling component in the DLG does not lend itself very well to the multi-grade setting, okay? That is reality. Because of that, I have utilized good spelling programs for a couple reasons. First of all, spelling is one of those areas where it wouldn't matter again if I were teaching in just a classroom with a bunch of 5th graders. I would have kids on different spelling levels. And I would want to make spelling lists that are challenging to them, but not so challenging that they're overwhelmed by it. And of course, the flip side would be true as well. I wouldn't want to provide a 5th grader who's spelling at a 8th grade level a 5th grade spelling list because that's not really challenging that student appropriately. One thing I would say about the vocab piece, though, is that I really think that the vocab aspect of this program can be used kind of as it is, because it connects to the anchor texts, which you're going to be teaching whole group anyways. And so I'm just pointing out here, in a second I'll come back and talk to you guys about this again with the spelling program. But just bear in mind that even though they're taught together, I think that there's some leeway in creativity that you may want to consider when it comes to the spelling piece of it. We'll talk about that in a second here. But day 1 for vocab, definition, parts of speech. Day 2, word categorization. Day 3, derivations. Fancy, nice, fun term there. Day 4, and this is very much related to vocabulary, right? Derivations are writing sentences on day 4, and then day 5, spelling and vocab test. Notice how the test is given together as well. And here's an actual very tiny little script. This is kind of what the test would look like right here. So this is the test. And then on this side right here is where the teacher could actually read a script. So you don't have to come up with your own sentences. Anyway, all right, I'm gonna close down my annotations there. And once again here, going back to the DLG, again, oops, that is the teacher's manual, an important resource for sure. But if you look there at word study day, this is just a week at a glance. Guys, I'm gonna say this again, just to be totally annoyingly pushing this issue. You really do need to look at this as you're planning your week. When you want to know which resources you need to be reproducing to hand out to your students out of the appendices, that's all going to be right there as well. Once you dive into the actual content and you go into the actual week, that's where you're going to find very well written lesson plans for you to be using. Some of them with those remember the whole group instruction thing we did with a single shard? That was all narrated right there in the text for you, and it was good. So there's very good content in here. You're not going to be able to have an entire lesson plan by looking at this page, but my goodness, this is a invaluable resource as you're planning through your week and getting ready to make sure your resources are ready to hand out to your students. Your resources are ready to put into a literacy center for your students to be working on. In fact, I would make an argument here briefly, and then I'll make it again at the end when I dedicate some time to talk with you guys about making this multi-grade friendly. But I really think you would be wise at the beginning of the year to teach a very specific routine for your students in vocab and spelling. Monday is, Tuesday is, Wednesday is, Thursday is, okay? That can go into a center. And those could be, components of those programs could very easily be, once they turn into a routine for your students, something that your students can go and work on while you are doing explicit, direct instruction in other content areas. I'm telling you that that is what has worked for me. In the absence of doing something like that, I believe that you will find yourself overwhelmed with the task of trying to get through this. Remember, we don't want our kids just being busy, although that's better than not being busy. Doing something is good. Being engaged and being busy is good. But if we can have them be engaged and busy doing work that they have to be doing anyway, and if your spelling and vocab portion of the word study is a routine that they know and they understand, they can walk to a center, they can pull out their folder for Monday, everything is there. Yes, that is going to keep them engaged and give you time to take a nap. I'm just kidding. It's going to give you time to update Facebook. No, I'm just kidding. It's going to give you time to do some direct instruction with kids who need it. So you can already be thinking about what part of this program do I need to be sitting down with kids in small groups? What are my other students going to be doing? So that they're not making your life difficult, which they would not do on purpose. Not necessarily. But here we can see that the word study for vocabulary here, this is a grade 7 DLG. And you can see there has content laid out for the entire week. They're day 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Spelling, the DLG says, hey, day 1, sorting activity. Maybe also have your students write out the words 3 different times in 3 different colors. I know that's not all the colors of a rainbow 3, but you get the point. Here is word cards. You'll see if you turn to the back of your DLG, you would see stuff that looks just like this. You'd see little codes on them and the correlating key down here to know what they are. You'll see that in the back of your appendix there. And then maybe day 2 is writing out sentences. Day 3 is a puzzler. So this is what I did with my students. And again, you can already see how this kind of cycle would be exactly the type of thing that you could put in a center in your classroom and just say to kids, hey, have you gone to the spelling center? Have you gone to the vocab center? Have you gone to the spelling and vocab center? Are you done with your day one activities? Yeah. Is it in your folder? Okay, so having this established as a routine at the beginning of the year, even though it's front loading. It requires some work up front. But trust me, if you do it, if you put in the work ahead of time and do this is kind of what you're doing now, by the way. Now, this is a great opportunity. You're not going to have more time when you get back to your classrooms. You're going to have vacuuming and rearranging the library the way you want to. Oh, meetings, yes. All that fun stuff. So front loading right now, it's not fun, but it's going to be invaluable to you to be able to have some of these resources in place to facilitate and support your students working independently. Because there are components of this program that are extremely important. This is where the actual success of the program is predicated, and those are areas which involve you being directly involved in your students' teaching. So just being aware of the components of the program that allow them to work independently is not about taking that nap I was joking about, but giving the opportunity to work with your kiddos. Spelling also has these ideas here as well, okay? I'll be honest, the list on the last page is not exactly what this suggests, okay? See, no, it's not. It's not. And I've said this before, and I've been asked to come back and share with you, so I'll just count that as it's okay. But in truth, I believe that the spelling program is something that if you were intentional about creating a good spelling program that met the unique needs of your students, you could be a very valuable thing, even if it were completely absent from any content being provided by the DLG. But I would really tap into the vocab aspect of it as well, just because the vocab piece of this ties right in with vocabulary they're going to need in their anchor text. So as a veteran of 15 years in multi-grade teaching, I'm just going to say that my 15 years of teaching in multi-grade, never once was a new curriculum introduced that had been written specifically for multi-grade. So, we love you. It's just, it is what it is. It is what it is. So this is another example of a sorting activity. The next slide here is an example that I use in Nearpod. I don't work for Nearpod, by the way. I don't work for Nearpod. But if you've not dabbled with Nearpod and you want to start getting into standards-based instruction, this is, in my opinion, one of the better resources. And I will admit to you, actually, that an ELA is probably not where you want to start with standards-based because it is so complex. But this year, I've said to my 7 teachers this year, I've said, hey, I want you to choose a content area where you're teaching. And I want you to write an entire unit just on standards using Nearpod. Nearpod's not the only resource out there, but being aware of how standards can be more broadly realized is helpful for 2 reasons. First of all, if you're a multi-grade teacher, it's helpful to understand the broad nature of a standard and how it can be applied in your classroom. And then it also helps create more, maybe a more in-depth dive into an activity that you feel maybe is not sufficient with the materials that are provided. And I don't want to sound critical because I actually believe that if we talked to the people who wrote this, they wouldn't be offended or bothered at all by the fact that someone said, hey, the phonics isn't quite enough. Or I feel like there should be more activities like the one we're doing right now, I think they'd say, yeah, absolutely. I think what they would say is, I know that this is hard to hear, but I think what they'd probably say is, hey, this represents like the least of what you can be doing, not the extent of what you should be doing. And it's just sort of gives some parameters and a definition of the types of things you should be working on. So again, cue into those. We're very blessed that the NAD correlated the content that is required in English and ELA to the CCSS standards. And they make them very easy to dive into and go deeper here. So this next slide is kind of an exploration on sorting that I use in Nearpod. And what we're looking at here are nouns. Is that on your page? Yeah, so the teacher view here. And this is probably a lower level. This is the teacher's view here. Nice thing about Nearpod is also I can see what all your, so this was actually an image of all your individual screens. So I can actually see who's working and who's not. Like no stress or anything, but I have to be able to do that online. You sort them. I would hope that you guys would do super well on
Work
that.
is both, right? So
One more time?
one of these work is both, so then,
Yeah, I think it was common way of
okay.
No, that's true. And then we can actually talk about how words evolve. Like typically, what in my college linguistics course, my teacher said that most words start as nouns and then can evolve into verbs and then can evolve into sometimes like adjectives. Like now we're describing themselves all over again. Like when email came out, it was just a noun, right? But now we verb, we email you, I'm emailing. Or someone will write a paper for me and I'll respond, I'll say, this sounds kind of email-y. The journey continues, the nature of language.
Do you do this instead of making reproducibles, like cutting down?
Honestly, yes. Yes. Yeah. My teachers will look at the standards that are in the reproducibles and correlate them to things like this. By the way, all of these assignments can also be assigned as independent tasks that require student logins, and then teachers get grades on them. And they can also be differentiated. So that code, that 8 RI1 can be 7 RI1 or 5 RI1, the grade level. So you can differentiate grade level but still realize the same standard or look at the same standard. Yeah, Chris.
These activities, 3 things. Are they already contained within Nearpod, or you created it within Nearpod, or you created it outside of Nearpod and imported it?
Yes, yes, and yes. The brilliance of Nearpod, if you buy the whole thing, and it's not cheap, it's like $3,000. It's like $3,000 for the whole thing.
For the school, that's school.
For the whole school,
Yeah.
in my opinion, has the best content created because it's actually created by curriculum specialists. That's the dice you roll with Teachers Pay Teachers. It's a great resource, but you roll the dice there because it's user generated. So it's either it's great and it's not good. You know what I mean? Like, oh, this is so great. Too bad it doesn't correlate to anything. But all of this does. So again, I'm just using this. I'm very excited about it. Our faculty are getting excited about standards. And as I was diving in, I'm like, wait a minute. The application for this is there too, but it's not the only thing that's available. Here's a phonics peek. This is taken out of the DLG. This is called, you guys ready? This is I won't make you cheer with me, an example of addressing phonological awareness. And this is a segmentation cheer. Yay. This is fun for little kids. This is definitely more geared towards lower students, right? We're looking at onset sounds or consonant sounds, CVCs, right? Consonant, vowel, consonant, and we're also looking at medial phonemes. Medials are like those middle sounds and then ending sounds. So here's a little chant that's actually provided. If you have an upper grade lesson plan, you won't see them in there, the DLG's in there. But yeah, it's a little chant, listen to my cheer. Shout the sounds you hear. Fun, fun, fun. We are segmenting the word fun. Give me the initial sound, right? Everyone's, right, exactly. Give me the medial sound. I love just throwing out the word medial. You probably would have equipped your students with some vocab before diving into this lesson. You're like, give me the medial.
Just said give me the middle sound.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's some merit in calling it medial, but a middle would work too, probably. Give me the middle sound, then give me the ending sound too. But it is a reminder of the importance of vocab before you jump in. You just like stand up on your desk trying to have that goosebumpy teacher moment, just shouting medial at your second graders. They're going home crying. Then he said I was medieval. Anyway, give me the final sound. Yeah, fun, fun, fun. Hip, hip, hooray. We're segmenting today. Yeah, so if that's you, go for it. But you can see how an example of this right here is not going to connect with every teacher personality. Like some of you are thinking right now, like, I'm going to lay down a beat with my kids. This is going to be we're going to do this every morning, segmentation, like Monday. It's going to be somewhat like, and others of you are like, no, not in a million years. And luckily for you, this correlates to standards, and you can dive in and find lots of really fun ways to produce medial phonemes in words. Awesome. So what about resources? Because remember way, way back at the beginning of the day, I said, man, you start looking at the spelling content and realize in those lower grades that is where phonics is taught. And then you start realizing, man, that is just not enough. That's not enough, and it's not. I mean, objectively, it's not. So what are some great resources for you guys to be looking at? In the first rendition of Pathways, they correlated all of their stuff to shall pop, or is it chow or shall? I feel like shall is a little pretentious. Is it chow, shall? What do we, is there? This is not a phonics lesson, I promise. I just don't want to be getting it wrong. Shall pop. It's just weird that a phonics, I mean, just the fact that phonics is not spelled phonetically is maybe one of the biggest ironies ever. Someone's like, let's spell phonics with a P. Anyway, so there's lots of other resources. I actually still think that this is a good resource to use. Level A is kindergarten, B is first grade, and C is second grade, I think. And actually, I think if you go onto the NAD's website, and you go to order components of Pathways 2.0, and you open up this big spreadsheet, and you look along the bottom there, it's first grade, second grade, third grade, all the way. There's a tab way at the very end called Phonics. Today, if you went there, and there would be order forms through the NAD for shall pop phonics, okay? So it's still there, and I think it's a valuable resource, and I think it's kudos to the NAD to realize that they should still be providing additional phonics support for the program. So you need to be, that's something you're going to be focusing on still. Oh, yeah, another resource that I had mentioned to a handful of you guys also as we chatted is still A to Z. Vocab A to Z, phonics A to Z is, if you got the whole ELA program, that little book that I showed you before, the Rhodes book, has a lesson that correlates to a pre-made phonics lesson, has pre-made phonics consumable cards for sorting, chunking, onset and rhyme, un, right? Un, although that's spelled differently. here we have an image, a blown up image of the NAD's resources here. And you can see here, K first and second grade have components that you're supposed to address in phonics. We got phonics awareness, phonics word recognition, phonological awareness, phonics and word recognition again in first grade. And actually this goes down to all the way at the beginning of fifth grade, there are some components of phonics, although admittedly it's not a massive piece of the ELA program. But let's take a moment here to understand and appreciate these codes right hither, right here, okay? Because the NAD went through the trouble of doing them, let's understand them, especially in multi-grade, where teaching to standards is going to be something that's going to be valuable to you. So, first thing, the coding system that precedes each standard begins with the content area. All are identified with LA for language arts. The second part of the code refers to the grade level. In this case, it's kindergarten or K, right? The second part of the code the third part of the code refers to the particular language arts domain, okay? RF is reading foundations. The fourth part of the code refers to a particular skill within the language arts domain, which is, in this case, it's 1. And the coding system that follows each standard is the Common Core State Standard for English, and it aligns with NAD standards, okay? So, if you went to Nearpod or Teachers Pay Teachers and you typed in LAK, no, that's not gonna work. But if you typed in the grade level, the period, the code here, and then the final, what do they call it? The domain. You would get, and I'll show you here, you would get a ton of content here. So if I were to take, for example, KRF1 and type it into Teachers Pay Teachers, just like that, I would have these resources pop up immediately. Now, are all of these amazing? I don't know. You have to do a little digging. That's the catch with Teachers Pay Teachers. Okay? But there's a ton of stuff in here. A ton of stuff in here that you can do. Okay? And in multi-grade, if this is how you make the program work in your room, then you are approaching this in a very informed way. And good for you. The challenge is that when people look at the program, become overwhelmed, and then they just don't do it, that's I think, infinitely worse. So I don't want to be beating this dead horse too much, but understanding these standards that are printed in your NAD produced language arts and reading standards book here, and also show up again in your DLGs, I just want you to know how you can use them. I want you to know how you can utilize those standards to fill in the pieces, to round out the academic experience you're providing for your students. Okay, I've kind of already done it. Okay, I just showed you that. I think I did a different standard though. 1 RF3. What's 1 RF3? First grade reading foundations, right? Domain 1. So 1 RF3. I've not done this one yet, so watch, maybe nothing will show up. No, there it is. Lots of good stuff. All right, so on the next page here, I'm just going to show you really quick a little work project that corresponds to the NAD standard. Complete the words using common digraphs. Digraph is just 2 letters. You know this. 2 letters that make one sound. Hey, by the way, I do want to mention something. Our school is online, but a lot a lot of our students, especially in first, second, and third grade, are sent consumable packets and work a lot with physical materials. So I didn't want to misrepresent what my school does. I think that these are great supportive components, but I don't think something like this will ever completely replace holding a pencil in your hand and pushing it across a piece of paper. It's just, there's no substitute for that. So I realized that when I said that we do these, I might have actually misrepresented a broader philosophical approach that we have. We want our kids working physically with things. All right, I trust you guys did well on this. One of the nice things about this is you can you can share the screen so everyone can see what everyone's putting, and of course that's like someone's always like, here's my chance. And you can just lock their screen so they can't participate anymore.
So when you pay the 3,000, is that a one-time thing, or do you have?
It's yearly.
What?
Yearly. Yeah. Yeah. It wouldn't be good. It wouldn't be good. But with the resources that are on Nearpod, you could, in fact, I just went through with my integrated science teacher, and for ninth grade, we're offering a integrated science class. And we correlated all of the standards for integrated science Nearpod in a way that you would not even need a textbook. Now, I'm not saying that's good, I'm just saying that it's possible. All right, off we go here. So, here's an example from the DLG for phonics. Okay, this is actually something that's typed up that suggests an activity that you can do. You write these words out on the board, cap, mole, beat, so on and so forth. Organize the list of words into two groups, long and short vowels. Have the list produced on thick paper, it says, so that students can cut the words apart and then categorize them into columns. By the way, a lot of these consumable aspects, if they are done on thick paper or even laminated, can be stored and used again. So just keep that in mind if you're that kind of planner. I'm like theoretically that kind of planner, and then I'm like, where did I put those in? So just be aware that if you do the work and you put it in a center, like a literacy center or some kind, or like a vocab center, laminating them or keeping them on thick cardstock paper is a good idea. I won't have you, you're welcome to do this for a minute here, but this is just another kind of activity of sorting. And, oh, I heard some people, you want to go back and try that again? Okay, I'm sorry. I just trust that everyone in here knows the difference between a short, long.
What does your screen look like?
This.
So how do you know some of them were doing it?
Secret? No. I also have this as a side screen here. So I can click on his and show everyone the work that Manuel's doing. He's doing a great job. Keep it up. You got this, Melissa. Keep at it. One is better than none. Takes a minute to update. Travis doing well. Look at you. Now everyone's like, I want to play. Is it a race? Did someone say it was a race? Anyway, all right, I'm gonna just warn you and go on here because I feel like you guys are like committed to this right now. But those sorting activities are fun. The DLG offers a 3-column sheet with cutout words that you can sort as well too. So I talked about this, phonics resource, reading A to Z phonics. You can, I think, click on that. I'll show you a couple things here. I don't know if you'll be able to access it without a login. But you can see here that it's in a whole program that it goes all the way through 4th grade that runs through all of the, I guess I would call it like a typical phonics program. The only thing that I don't love about this is that it's not been correlated to any CCSS standard that I can find. So you may have to dig a little bit and correlate it that way too. But that's not that bad, because what it is correlated to are the books that you can read for guided reading. So you read a guided reading book will come with a lesson plan through reading A to Z that then says, for this guided reading book, you can do these phonics activities. It'll be linked to them. You can print them off. So this is, obviously I'm sharing this as a digital resource right now, but, and you can utilize it as a digital resource, but you can also produce consumable materials for your students as well, which again is what I advocate for. It has these lesson guides, which I think are great. It actually has an entire, gives you the learning objectives, a suggested duration, the materials that you're going to need right here. You can see those. It has kind of a way to introduce the lesson and go through it. You'll have access to this, and you can click back on this if you want again. Then it has suggested activities here that go along with it. Here's obviously some cards that you're going to cut apart. And then match. So that's a new sound. What does that mean?
That's my phone.
Oh, it's beautiful. My mom had a grandfather clock in her house, our house. It's brings back memories. Not only does A to Z offer leveled books, like I was saying, for your students, but it has all of these components that correlate to the program too. So if you're in reading, if you're thinking, okay, I got this guided reading class with my students now, I've already done some pre-assessments in the first couple weeks of school. I know where my students are at. I understand what reading levels they're on. And then you start clumping them into groups. And you're using A to Z, you can use a book with one of your groups that's correlated directly to their reading level. And then you can also have a bunch of other resources in phonics that correlate as well, plus writing activities that correlate too, which I wouldn't necessarily dive into too much, because I think the writing workshop, which is what we're going to finish with, is actually one of the very best pieces of Pathways 2.0. All right. We're finishing a little early here, but I do have some questions. I do want you to, I'll do this actually, because the last part is a little bit long. I'll get started on that. But do you guys have any questions yet on the, anything that I've been discussing here in terms of how it can be used in your classroom, best practices or planning for multi-grade or anything like that? Because I do have a portion at the end that I want to talk to you guys about with how it can be utilized for multi-grade. Yeah?
Did you mention new programs for spelling outside of those? I don't remember hearing.
No, I didn't. No. I wish I could tell you, it's probably best that I'm not up here advocating for other spelling programs. But there are a lot of spelling programs that actually also incorporate vocabulary instruction too.
You got a reason, isn't there reason, spelling, reason for writing, don't they?
Well, I know there's a reason for handwriting. That's the handwriting one, which I would recommend this one. Okay. My 5th and 6th and 7th and 8th grade teacher just had met and just planned all their vocab and spelling content and sent me the resource that they're using, and it slipped to my mind.
At my school, we use Wordly Wise. Oh, yeah.
That might be it, actually.
Which one? Wordly Wise.
Is it? It's vocabulary too, yeah.
But you recommend using the vocab out of the
Honestly, what I recommend, and I would hope that any of my colleagues that are here helping out on this would correct me if I'm speaking out of place, but I think your objective in multi-grade is twofold. Having a program that works for you on a consistent basis, but also one that meets the objectives and meets the needs of your students where they are. And again, I feel confident that the authors of this curriculum would not say to you, if you have a 5th grader who's spelling on a 1st grade level, that you just give him those 5th grade words, right? So, the only reason I mentioned maybe really focusing on the vocab is because of the connection the vocab has in the DLG to the to the anchor text. So if you do utilize a vocab and spelling program that isn't this one, maybe I would check in with the DLG for if it's called ATV, the anchor text vocab, and see if you could just incorporate that into a part of what you're doing so that that connection is being made there too. Because obviously, that's an important part of whole group instruction, and also sets them up to be successful reading and talking about the book. All right, any other questions? This is where everyone feels like they're supposed to ask a question, right? Everyone's struggling here. So let me just get started on this for a minute here, and then I'll wait for my alarm to go off. But this is kind of good because these first two pieces, I think are maybe misunderstood or not really appropriately incorporated into the language arts program. But for writing workshop, handwriting instruction and keyboarding instruction, I think should be a part of that writing workshop. There's mention for that. For the lower grades, handwriting, a reason for handwriting is an excellent resource. I would make the argument that handwriting is maybe a content area that could be taught even after the suggested termination time, which I think what is it, third grade now? Fourth? Oh, six, is it through six? That's right, okay. Because it's kind of like one of those, like you need it if you need it. No matter what grade you're in. Yeah, Chris.
I don't want to get you in trouble, but I'm just making sure I understood. Typically on our daily schedule analysis, handwriting has its own block.
Right.
You're saying there's merit for just being integrated into the writing?
Amen. And I'm going to talk about this at the end a little bit too, but as a means of making sure I'm covering everything I need to discuss with you guys, I'm segmenting it a little bit more than I probably would need to in reality in terms of how it would look like expressed in the content you're covering during the day. You might require, for example, students to write their opening paragraph, have them write it out on manuscript paper, which is a part of the writing workshop. But you're incorporating handwriting instruction into that as too. If you're asking if that's something you can do, I would say that is absolutely something you should be doing. The only consideration that I would maybe invite you to have is this. Handwriting as a separate content area for my lower graders is something I know they can do independently. Do I check it? Do I have them go through and circle their very best letters and show them to me? Do I circle the ones they need to read? Yes, okay. But does that give me 10 minutes a day to take a nap and update my Facebook account? No, I'm just kidding. Guys, I'm joking. I just want to make, don't do that, okay? No, unfortunately I come by sarcasm very well, both my mom and dad, but I've learned that not everyone appreciates or gets sarcasm. And I've said that before, and someone's like, I can't believe you're doing that, and that you would say that in front of people. I'm like, I don't do that. So for my lower graders, absolutely, this would be something that would be in a center around the room, handwriting. But in terms of handwriting instruction for my upper grade students, I would incorporate that right into something they're doing for a writing workshop.
Yeah. It makes sense to me. I'm just wondering once I turn in my daily, if I turn in the paperwork.
Here's what I do. I turn in, for Michigan conference, I turn in a description of what I'm teaching, the amount of time I'm teaching it, and the number of minutes that I'm doing it over the course of a week. And at the bottom, I write a note, and I say, FYI, handwriting, 10 minutes a day, is incorporated into my writing time. And I've never had anyone say anything to me except for, great idea, Ben. No, you're just not going to, I don't want to speak on anyone's behalf, so please shut me down if I'm wrong. But if you are identifying that the time is there and available, but that it is being realized in the program in a specific way and in an intentional way, I can't imagine any one of your superintendents would come to you and say, you know, Chris, you have to be teaching your 8th graders 10 minutes specifically explicit and direct handwriting instruction. I think they would want to know in what ways you are overseeing the process and the objective ways you're evaluating the merits of what they're producing, but I think what I just said previously stands. Emily, what were you gonna?
Oh yeah, I totally agree. I was just for the younger grades too, like they have their own practice, but I'm teaching handwriting and I have it for fun because it's part of my
Absolutely.
teaching class.
Absolutely. Yeah, a lot of phonics instruction have students writing the letters, producing them. Anyway, so the handwriting, I already talked about that reason for handwriting. It's very nice. If you don't have any experience with this, I really think this is it's very nice because it is self-pay. It's something they can dive into and do themselves. They like the border sheets in the back that they can color for their getting ready for their Bible verse on Friday that they're going to write out. They just enjoy it. It's something that they really, really enjoy. And yeah, you've seen it right here. This is just a link to it. The keyboarding options that I like, there's lots of free ones. The only problem with the free keyboarding options are that they don't have like an administrative or teacher dashboard that allows you to understand like if students are logging in, the amount of time they're putting in the lessons they're doing. The ones that I put up here, the Typing Agent and typing.com, both produce login credentials for students that evaluates how much time they're logged in each week, the lessons that they're doing. You can also assign lessons to them that you want them working on, which is just good too.
That one was Typing Agent.
Both of those. Yep, both of those.
Conference, I think, remember that was required, they did that instead of typing pal.
I'm sorry, one more time?
They changed it from typing pal to typing agent.
Yeah, it did go through about 5 years ago, it changed, yeah. So, those are good.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is this something that is optional that or do we have to use?
These are just some options. Now, remember that so we're online, my school's online, and we actually teach explicit typing instruction to our first graders because they're using a device, and so we want them learning to use it properly. But typically, there's kind of a trade-off that happens. There's some, like the Venn diagram crossover with handwriting and typing, but usually our upper grade students are the ones that are focusing in on keyboarding and typing skills once they've matriculated out of the handwriting world. I'm not certain if you would find those as a requirement, but in my experience, these are the ones that have those control pieces. Like a student has to be able to log in. Like they can't go play the typing racing car game. What is that? It's what, Nitro Type? Right? Like, Mr. I played Nitro Type today for 5 minutes. Like, great, fun, not a typing class. So you don't know if they're logged in, you don't know what they're doing, but these you do, and you can assign work to them as well.
So in other words, when we're doing writing, I can assign them to, okay, I want you to write this paragraph, blah, blah, blah.
So that's the other thing I was just going to say here in 20 seconds. You have to play this by ear, but I actually don't allow my students to type their papers until they're proficient at typing. So sometimes, unless I have them use typing a paper they've already written as part of their typing instruction too, written out by hand. So that can also be creative too. But I really don't believe in turning kids loose on a keyboard typing unless they have some explicit instruction on it too.
So during writing, you teach writing first and then somewhere along the line.
Yeah, I'll tell you that typing is definitely an independent working thing for my students. That's another independent work piece. All right, now it is officially break. I'm going to get started. Writing workshop at a glance. Sorry guys, I'm doing it again. even the writing workshop, even the writing workshop component, the week of instruction should begin, right, by looking here at this table, okay? I've looked at these enough that I always know that if I get to at a glance and I want to know what's in writer's workshop, that I go to at a glance and I turn the page, because it's always on the second page. That's just 10 years of looking at this, so. So the writing workshop is broken into, first of all, always some sort of mini lesson, unless the content you covered in the mini lesson requires a significant amount of work. So that mini lesson could be the foundation on which, like a couple days of work could be realized. But you'll see there, if you look in the DLG, underneath the writing workshop, that they give this little writing mini lesson. In this one, grade 6 heroes, week 2, the writing mini lesson says, personal narrative, turning memories into stories.
I can't see where you're reading.
Oh, I'm just reading here out of this. It's not on what I'm sharing, yeah. Into stories, drafting a story scene. And then, of course, my favorite is the standard listed after it. Because honestly, for these mini lessons, I'm gonna use that standard, especially because I have access to Nearpod. But guess what? They provide something in the book that does it for you. It's really interesting. I think one of the reasons they did Pathways 2.0, one of the main reasons I believe they did it, is because it did not have a good writing workshop component. And when they did 2.0, they completely integrated the writing workshop. So it's actually the newest component of this. It was like in a little spiral-bound notebook before, and it was just cumbersome and not well integrated and well thought out. But I really think that the writing workshop, you could teach it just the way it is and use it not only in the grade you're teaching, but in fact across several grades at a time. And I'll mention that here in a second. But as you can see here, if you look there, you'll see right underneath it, it has that little mini lesson and then some grammar mini lessons. You're incorporating those pieces of grammar. Sometimes those used to be called the DOLs, the daily oral language. Yeah. But the writing workshop is always made up of these 4 pieces. Number 1, the mini lesson, okay? Then some sort of guided practice. So this is like you're getting your students right into the act of writing, but with some help. You're facilitating it, scaffolding, making sure that they're being successful in pursuing the objectives put forth in the mini lesson. And then you give them the opportunity to work independently, fulfilling those objectives that were talked about in the mini lesson. And then they dive into the writing task. One thing I'd like to just share with you, a little piece of advice. When your students get to this piece here, the independent writing, I have started, I would say in the last 5 years of my teaching career, employing a strategy that completely changed the writing experience for my students. Once we got to the level 4. And let me explain why. This piece here, the mini lesson, the guided practice, and the independent practice, all had a lot of built-in objectives into the writing experience that allowed my students to understand kind of how they were progressing through the writing process. But when they got to the independent writing piece, the most annoying words ever spoken to a writing teacher started coming at me. Mr. Zork, I'm what? Stuck, fine. That's not as annoying as the one I'm thinking of. Huh? Also super, maybe that's a bad one. Done.
Oh, yeah, of course.
I'm done. I'm like, well, congratulations on being the first author ever in the history of writing to have finished a piece of writing and to have just been done. Wow. You're done. Congratulations. You know what's interesting? When Avi visited our class, even without prompting him, one thing he shared with my students was this. He said, I will read my books and find 100 things I would change. And I was like, thank you for saying that. Because Mr. Zork, I'm done, stopped being said after that. I'm like, you're not done, dude. Like, what does that mean? It probably means I'm bored, or it means I'm stuck. That's code. I'm done is code for I'm bored or I'm stuck. So this is not a part of the program. This is just something I'm going to share with you. When you get to the independent writing piece, I provide my students with WFAs. I call them WFAs. I call them writing focus areas. So each day, after I've gone through a mini lesson, after I've gone through guided practice, after they've done some independent practice, every day at the beginning of writing class, I put on the board their WFAs. It's usually 2 or 3 requirements that they have to accomplish during the writing time that day. So they're never done, right? And for my 5th through 8th graders this year, sometimes it was, you have to go through your writing assignment, and you have to locate 3 telling verbs. I called it verb removal. And you have to take the verb out, and you have to replace that single verb with several words that describe what that verb is without saying it. So you following what I'm saying? So they can't use the word run anymore. They have to say, he didn't run through the field. He or sprinted is fine. No, even better yet, he threw one leg in front of the other as quickly as he could. So now you're not even saying the word run. So verb removal. So I said, you have to go through your story. And focus area here is to do 7 verb removals today and 100 words of additional writing. I usually don't make numbers of words one of them, but that's just a piece of advice that changed my writing instruction for my students, because you go through this whole process and there's these little tiny metrics that help students understand and evaluate how they're doing and where they are in the writing process and if they're meeting expectations or not. And then they're to the independent writing stage and suddenly they're what? They're done. No, they're bored or they don't know what to do or whatever. So those little, you can call it whatever you want, but the writing focus areas proved to be super, super helpful. Not just, I don't know if you noticed, that was 2 supers. It was super, super helpful in my classroom. And I just wanted to share that with you. Sometimes it's, you put 2, 3 verb action patterns in your writing. Find it. And they go through and they highlight it. 3 verb action. Johnny ran, jumped, and landed on the other side, stuff like that. So this is not stuff you're going to see in the book. I'm just telling you that's a practical thing that I like to do. Question, Chris?
Yeah, I just missed the difference between the independent practice and the independent writing.
Oh, I'm going to pull these apart a little bit here. Was that your thought too? Okay, very good. So if you have a book in front of you, I'm going to see, not all of these have it here, but I'll do it this way. Oh, I will answer that question, I promise. But here's a page right out of the DLG, okay? Writing a persuasive letter. The way that it's broken apart is, I think, quite valuable. It shows some transition words there, heading and greeting portions. So I would probably share this with my students, go through with it, make sure that they're comfortable understanding almost like the physical components, right, of a persuasive letter before they even dive into it. That would be what? What part would that be? That would be the mini lesson, right? Ooh, I'm all zoomed in here. Here we go. And then we'd go into some guided practice. And I wrote some notes here for this, and they didn't show up on my page, so excuse me while I navigate here to my notes. Yeah, so in guided practice, just for an example, And if we're talking about persuasive writing, you might create a time in your class for your students to brainstorm a list of changes that they would like to see in their school. So this guided practice is under the observation and tutelage of the teacher. So you say, guys, we've kind of gone through, we've kind of know what this looks like. I want you guys to work with your clock partner or get into these groups. And I want you to brainstorm a list of things that you think would be fun if we were to change about the school. Of course, you'll get some goofy ones, right? Gum chewing is required. Required? Yes, required. And I also put here, if you'd probably want to make sure that the list is restricted to kind of the goal and request concept, that they're able to formulate these ideas in a complete sentence too. That's kind of like an additional component there. The independent practice would be like, okay guys, so now we kind of what this looks like. This one could be dangerous. It's funny that I use this example. I probably wouldn't actually do this in reality unless I wanted to get some angry phone calls from parents. But I'd say, okay, so tonight I'd like you to go home and I'd like you to sit down. I'd like you to think about maybe, I'm sorry, it was guided practice, sorry. Independent practice is different, I'm sorry. This is where I would then assign those students in groups to then work in smaller groups, collaboratively, or maybe with one other person, to generate just a list of those 3 changes that they'd like to see happen, maybe in their homes. So they're generalizing what they talked about in school and this is the dangerous piece, and then maybe discuss some of the rules they wish were different in their school. And then the final piece, independent writing, after the students have identified one or more change they would like to see in their homes and then they would write it as a goal using a complete sentence in their writing notebooks or on a piece of paper or in their document. So what you want to think about is essentially this process 1 through 4 is a process of introducing objectives, okay? Showing them how to successfully meet the needs of the requirements through a guided practice, kind of showing them what it looks like. Independent practice then would still be having them work, but with your help there facilitating the process. And then independent writing would be having them work without your direct oversight. But with, I would argue, those WFAs, some sort of goal in mind, which is a part of the program that is left out that I think is important.
Once you say the guided practice was, are they in a large group at this time, or are they individual?
That's up to you. It really depends on the number of students you have in your class. Sometimes dividing a small group into smaller groups is not super valuable. If you have like 5 kids in your class and you're like U2 and U3, right? Or U2.5 and U2.5. It's messy, but it's equal at least. The mini lesson is, again, you're introducing the objectives. You kind of show how it's done. The guided practice is having them work on something with your direct oversight, you're actually helping them do it. The independent practice then, so this might have some scaffolding in it too. I could think of like maybe having a second grader with a piece of paper with some of the components on it. Maybe some arrows, put your heading here. Then the independent practice is them saying, okay, I'm going to give you 10 minutes to just start writing the body of your content right now. And you're not over there like telling them what to do. And then the independent writing would be really where the majority of the writing takes place in terms of the amount of time.
Yeah, how many minutes would you give to all of that?
So luckily, it does say right here in the DLG for writing, and I don't have it committed to my long-term memory. I think it's 40 minutes a week. Per day, I'm sorry. Can you imagine? Oh, help me. So In 6th grade, it says writing workshop is 30 minutes.
But I mean, how
A day.
many minutes for mini lesson, guided reading practice, and writing?
So honestly, here's how I treat this. A lot of times I treat my writing as units. And I'll do several mini lessons in preparation. And then we'll do maybe a day of guided practice and a day of a little bit more oversight, and then sometimes a week of independent writing. And that depends on the type of writing you're doing. Okay, if you're doing longer persuasive letters or whatever, that's probably not something in 30 minutes that's going to go from a mini lesson to being done. So, I mean, that's a fair question, but I do think that I'm not certain there's a proper answer for all writing content for that. If it's poetry, and the objective is just doing like AABB poetry writing, you could probably get all the way down to some independent practice in a single day with it. So it just really depends on the type of content. But if you're doing like short stories, then for me that would be probably a day of mini lessons, a day of guided practice, and then maybe independent practice, and then into independent writing, maybe 1 or 2 weeks.
So in other words, this is not something that you do 10 minutes of mini lesson, 10 minutes guided practice, 10 minutes of, it's not like that.
No, that's not how I do it. Maybe, I don't know, Emily, Mrs. Graham, do you do a mini lesson every day with writing? I'm saying I don't. Typically I do a mini lesson to introduce, because some writing assignments are longer than others.
Right, right.
So over 2 days.
It could be.
It depends on the topic or the
Yeah.
assignment. Just varies.
Well, I just thought that that's the way it's broken down in that 40 minutes or however minutes you get, so many minutes for this, so many minutes for that. But that's one thing.
No, because it could just it could be very different if you're doing like poetry versus autobiography or something. But it's a fair question. Okay, where'd we leave off here? Oh, so this points out here that there is an appendix. You'll see B, and this is just on the screen here. I'm not in mine here. But we have the writing workshop, writing mini lesson, and then the resource in Appendix B. And by the way, all writing resources are found in Appendix B. All reading and writing resources are found in Appendix B. All of them, 100% of them. All assessments are also listed at the very beginning of the DLGs here. And the assessments also share with you ideas for summative assessments and formative assessments. And I will tell you that I think it is very important that before you teach anything, you think about how you are going to assess your students. It's like kind of knowing where you're going before you get in the car to drive. And I like, there's lots of really valuable, both formative and summative assessment ideas that are given here. You can see some of the formative ideas that are put down there include something as simple as like checklists, clickers, discussions, stuff like that. And then the summative ones are all included actually in the, let's see here, Appendix C is assessments. So these are summative assessments. And these are valuable, especially if you're leaning on the book a lot for some of your content. You know, you can go through and give a vocabulary pre-assessment. By the way, this is nice. They do have pre-assessments in here too for vocab and spelling. Yep, kind of same thing. All right, so this is where I wanted to finish for today, because this is a small school group. There's only three of you that are teaching in a one-room school. Is that right, 3 of you? Okay, and are you All by yourselves? No aid?
No, you-
What, do you know how many grades you have?
4, 6 kids, 4 grades.
Okay,
I have 7 kids, 5 grades.
okay.
Yeah, I've got 4 grades, or 5 grades actually, but about 8 kids, maybe 10.
That's encouraging.
No, I'm here for you and I want to help you. Well, let's talk about some big ideas first, okay? There are definitely ways, if we were to circle back and think about this, but first of all, over the entire course of grades 1 through 8, you can see that there are a lot of differences between the lower grades, especially with those emergent readers, and then the independent readers that exist, hopefully, right, up through middle school and the upper grades. And so multi-grade classroom teachers really need to be creating literacy corners or centers. I guess they don't have to be in a corner. But some sort of literacy or handful of literacy centers where your older students or even just students who are capable of working independently, maybe you have a second grader that's reading on like a 6th grade level, which is amazing, but has its own unique set of challenges, right? But creating those centers, once again, I've said this, but it's so important. Gives those students the opportunity to work independently while you take advantage of the opportunity to work one-on-one or two-on-two or in small groups with those lower grade students. It also means that you can have your students engaged in relevant, not just busy work, right? Relevant work. Although, let me just give you one-room school teachers permission to sometimes just keep your kids busy. That's also okay. Like, it's better than standing on the chair or duct tape. It's both of those is better than both of those. And these centers are, there's resources in the back in the DLG that are designed to be utilized independently. But it is why thinking ahead and planning ahead for accommodating those students who are capable of working independently, giving them the time to do that, because it is the difference between, I think, the reality of this program working and it just being a constant struggle. I do want to point out something here, and I mentioned this before. I have an app now on my phone again that I downloaded. It was off, but I put it back on. But it is called Book Leveler. Book Leveler, and you can scan. You can scan, well, not every book. The books that are produced just for Pathways sometimes don't show up. But you can take this book, the I Am Malela book, and scan it, and it will give you the reading level, and actually this one it doesn't either, so it's just fun. Did it not work for you either? It might be too high, actually. At some point it stops doing it. But it will give you the level, the number of like text density, and the lexile as well. And I bring this up for this reason. I went into a classroom. I was doing some coaching for a teacher, and they had a literacy center set up, which was great, a great first step. But I asked the teacher, I said, hey, what's that student doing over there in the literacy center? And they said, oh, they're doing independent reading. Now, that's great, okay? But the kindergartner had like the Merriam-Webster's like collegiate dictionary, like upside down, like spine in, like spine in, like spine towards the reader, like the pages were out here. And I'm like, sweet, that is definitely independent. But it's not reading. And here's the deal, here's what happens. If you don't provide a collection of resources for your students to self-select from, you will have lower readers selecting texts that are too difficult, and you'll have high readers selecting texts that are too easy. Typically, that's what happens. Because those first graders want to hold the dictionary. Did I lose it here? But that's not a meaningful academic pursuit yet, not in first grade. And by the way, it was like the 1984 Merriam-Webster's Collegiate Dictionary, like literally, that was it. Because I remember, I was like, this is amazing. And it was literally upside down and like, are you guys understanding?
Yeah.
Like the spine was in. Something was going on there. And that's a very extreme example. But we want to, like, again, set them up to be successful. My kindergartners and first graders knew they could go to a center where they had a sign up that said emergent reader library, and it was all coded, and they knew that it was at least something that was appropriate for them. So that's super important. I almost said super impossible. So, I already talked about this, so I'm just kind of circling back and reiterating the importance of remembering this. The vocab and the spelling, all right? Vocab and spelling, those can be done independently. I would really encourage you to think about creating a program that, and a routine for your kids that allows them to know what they're doing on Monday and Tuesday, and to have that ready and accessible for them, both in vocab and spelling. And the final piece is this, at least on this slide anyway, is writing. Writing is inherently leveled. Do you guys know what I mean by that? Like it's leveled at the level that the writer is writing at. Yeah. Which means if you have an 8th grader writing at a 3rd grade level, do you want them to stay there? No. But the objective isn't to make them write at the 8th grade level right then. The objective is to facilitate their growth towards, writing at a higher level. But you might have a 3rd grader writing at a higher level, and of course you don't want them to write down at their 3rd grade level. No, you're going to do what you can to accommodate them and allow them to pursue, like, writing at a higher level. And for that reason, I want to just make a point here. I hope I put this on the next slide. I didn't. It'll be ahead, but I want to make sure that I don't miss this. I'm sorry, I forgot. What was your name again? Christine. I was speaking with Christine. She's teaching 1 through 4 and then 5 through 8, I think, right? Is that right? Okay. And what I said in her situation, she should only use her 7th grade DLG, the highest level DLG, and look at the program in Writer's Workshop there. And then differentiate the content down to 5th grade. Because actually, if you were to look at the mini lesson content and the standards that were addressed on a unit by unit basis, right? You understand what I'm saying? If you took the first unit, the 3rd month in 5th grade, and took the first unit, 3rd month in 7th grade, they would both be the exact same standard, just at grade level. So, as a multi-grade teacher, she should be looking at the 7th, because the 7th grades are the highest grade level she'll be teaching. What's the highest grade level you're teaching? That's not necessarily true in a one-room school, although I would argue it's possible. I mean, I know that that's what I did when I taught. One year I had 24 kids in grades K through 8. Now, I did have 2 full-time assistants. So actually now I regret saying that, so I'm sorry. totally different story. What that does then is it gives you content to go off of, and then you level it down for the kids that need it leveled down for. You differentiate it up for students that are writing at a higher level. But in terms of where you're getting the inspiration for the idea of what you're teaching for writing workshop, use one of the books. Okay? Because a persuasive letter at a 5th grade level has the same basic components as a persuasive letter at an 8th grade level. What's the difference? The amount that they're required to contribute themselves, right? But what you choose to teach about persuasive writing from the front of the classroom is going to be the same. And in one-room schools, my 1st graders got a lot of 7th grade level instruction in science and social studies. And then while my 7th and 8th graders worked independently on what I just talked about, they came up and we worked on something on the same topic, but at their level. So we can talk some more about that, but yeah, and a box of tissues. Yeah. So there's some unique components of the reading workshop again. Remember, reading workshop, where's the big emphasis in direct explicit instruction in reading workshop? In 1 through 4 is in where? Yeah, phonics and guided reading, right? Guided reading. Is there a lot of explicit direct instruction in phonics and guided reading in grades 5 through 8 in reading workshop? No. So should you be thinking about how you want to plan those times? I would plan them kind of offset against each other. You should have you shouldn't be trying to do whole group instruction to 5 through 8 at the same time you're trying to do small group instruction for 1 through 4. Because both of those are where the explicit instruction takes place. Remember, you're not pulling in small groups in your 5 through 8 world. You're pulling in small groups in your 1 through 4. Maybe that's the time for your 5 through 8 to be doing their independent reading activity. I think I just did this. So the thematic content for writing workshop is the same in all content levels. True or false? It's not exactly the same. And so actually it's weird. I had adjusted a couple slides in my presentation, and I apologize, they got missed out. I gave an example, I think it was with the 3rd grade book and the 7th grade book, and I showed that the correlation of the writing workshop was the same in those levels. I think actually below 3rd grade, writing workshop looks a little bit different, okay? So you're gonna have to think about that if you have students in 3rd grade or below in with students in 5th grade or below. But even then I would take the highest grade level that you have for writer's workshop for the upper grades and teach that, and then I would take the highest lower grade level you have and teach writer's workshop out of that. Because it's easier to take higher level and scaffold it down, right? I think, than it is to take lower level and scaffold it up. So that's kind of my thought.
So I mean, they literally have one 4th grader and then 5 through 7. So then the 4th grader would be in the 3rd grade book, correct? Because it's an odd year?
He would be, or she would be, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm super glad you made that point, by the way. That is awesome. Here's the deal. Are you teaching, though, because whatever you choose to do. Like, keep it the same.
Yeah.
Because sometimes what we have, like, the reason I say it's awesome is because the tendency would say I have a 4th grader, I'm just going to teach the 4th grade book, right?
Right, well, yeah.
Because I have a 4th grader, I don't have a 3rd grader.
Right.
But you always have to be wondering, what if someone comes in the middle of the year? What if that student leaves and then the grade? So it's always important to choose a cycle and stay with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's good. All right, so we don't have to answer this question. So, yeah, this is all predicated. This slide is predicated on some slides that we're missing. Talked about this already too. I'm looking at the time. Okay, we'll finish with this activity because I think this is a good little pursuit here to finish up our time together. But here we have this lesson right here. This is taken right out of the DLG. This is a writing lesson. And it has this little script. It says, explain to students that most persuasive letters will be written in business letter format. And then it says, create a business letter format anchor chart. You know what an anchor chart is? It's like a template, right, that kids can implement content into, right? That would be the second level after the mini lesson, right, guided practice. It's like here's a way that you can be totally that you would really have to be trying to not be successful. I've basically put the template in front of you so you can practice doing it, and then you're gonna do it without the template, and then you're gonna do it, by yourself independently. So what I'd like for you to do is, on this next slide, is I'd like you to go through and think of ways that you could take this. I think this is a 6th grade lesson right here. Clearly taken with my phone. Yeah, it's not actually printed in waves like that in the book, you'll notice. Yeah, so it goes through the date, the inside address, the salutation, the body, the closing, the signature, and then it goes through what the guided practice would look like. It says what? Collaboratively brainstorm topics after the topic list has been developed. It goes through all these ideas here on this side right here. And then it goes to the independent writing. Oh, and down here it even included a handwriting objective, Chris, right here. At the very bottom. So this goes right along with what you were talking about. Can you have students write some things and then incorporate right into that writing assignment and fulfill a handwriting objective? So I would argue that the position you took is absolutely fundamentally accurate.
It does say use technology. Are you saying typing?
Well, I would look up this standard here.
Okay.
Because handwriting is not typing.
Right.
You make an excellent point. I mean, it's writing with your hands.
Yeah, no, I got
Yeah, okay. So here's what I want you guys to do. Those of you here that are willing to participate here. If you wanted to look at that again, you could click this right here and read it through. Take a minute to read it through. And then on this page right here, you can start sharing some of your ideas. Ways that this 6th grade lesson could be differentiated down to even a 2nd grade level. So how could you take this lesson that you're reading about right here and even help potentially someone as low as 2nd grade understand elements of a persuasive writing? And you can type your thoughts like this. I think you can do it. It will be fun. And then obviously that's not an answer to the question, right? You could also hit your mic and record an answer. I think you could just make it 2nd gradery. There we go. These are obviously the best answers, which is why I've selected them for myself. And then you can put that audio there. You can even go here and put an image here, and you could search for an image of someone doing something. I don't think the application there is very great. You could even record a video of yourself answering it. But then I love this. This is a group work pad or a pinboard. I use this all the time for discussion with a question I ask my students too, because they can record themselves and students can like it. They can respond to someone's response. And it's a great way to generate some thoughts. So you could go through that and put some ideas down. Anyone gonna do that in 1 minute and 30 seconds? You don't have to. Something that I have done is I have actually created all the components of a persuasive letter and mixed them up and had my 2nd graders put them in order. That's very basic, right? For some of my 2nd graders who are a little more adept at reading and writing, I've given them a template. So kind of like that basic template and put in things like my name is, my address is, and basically scaffold it almost as like a cloze, a C-L-O-Z-E, cloze activity, where they're just filling in components of the letter. That's a way you could teach the same lesson as a second grade lesson, taken out of a sixth grade book. We're running out of time here quickly, so. Some people are listed, that's nice. You know, Chris, I mean, sometimes quantity is a good metric, right? You can say to an eighth grader, the body of your persuasive essay has to be 2 paragraphs long, but you might just say to a fourth grader, has to be 3 sentences or something like that.
Well, I was just thinking too, I don't know, all the indenting, I would just go, I wouldn't tell the second grader to do it. I would
No.
just get however many exact lines, and just
Yeah.
say hi, say what you want to say to
Yeah.
them, then say goodbye, and say, you know.
Yeah, yeah. You might have other, like they have to use all proper spelling.
Yes, yes.
Proper capitalization and punctuation.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, good. I don't know if my email is included on the Padlet, but it is? Okay, awesome. If you guys, between now and the course of the beginning of your year, you want to reach out and try to connect, I'm happy to be a resource as you plan in your life. If there's unique situations that exist in your world, in your little ministry that you're providing somewhere out where you're all by yourself, feel free to reach out. I have examples to share with you. I have my own scope and sequence that I've used in planning in small schools and stuff like that too. They may be a little outdated, but I'm happy to be a resource even after the fact. So,
Quick question.
yeah,
Will your presentation be in the Padlet?
yeah, it is in the Padlet.
I will do it.
ELA is a big, guys, it's a big piece of what you're doing. Those minutes, right? You start looking at those minutes, you're like 600 and, 40 minutes or something like that? You're starting to ask yourself, I'm just teaching ELA all day long, basically, and you kind of are. You kind of are. One final thing. For math, I know I'm not teaching math, but I often scheduled components of my daily routine that were independent work opportunities against my math classes. Okay. Because I could say to a kid who wants help, did you do typing? Did you do keyboarding? Did you do your grammar assignment? Did you do your DOL? So they're engaged in something valuable. And then for reading, I just, I allowed my upper graders, my 5th or 8th graders, were doing their independent reading instruction while I was doing those small group instruction with my lower graders in the afternoon. I'm sorry?
What do you mean against your math?
So at the same time, like contiguously. So it was daily routine and math at the same time. Because I'm teaching eight, like the only time I ever felt sorry for myself in a one-room school is teaching math. I have like 7 teacher's manuals around me. Yeah. And 7 different grade levels that need help. And I'm helping the 5th graders, so what are my other students doing? Yeah. Handwriting, keyboarding, grammar, vocabulary, in their centers, quietly, with the routine. I'm telling you, the first 2 weeks of school in a one-room school or a small school is routines, routines, routines. All right, guys, thank you so much.